Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about this United States policy shift on Israel. Settlements primarily, as we all know now that initially when the current president of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump, took charge, he supported Jerusalem as the new capital of Israel. Later on, we all got to know that the hostile takeover of the Golan Heights again was supported by the Americans, and now the settlements, and primarily you're talking about the West Bank and the East Jerusalem settlements, and though the whole world believes that they are illegal, but the Americans are still supporting it. Now this conflict primarily has been there ever since Israel came into being, but now things are really getting out of hands. The kind of atrocities which we witness from the Israeli troops on ground, the way they are treating the Palestinians, the way the mass murder is taking place, it's something which is definitely very shameful to the all world powers who are the decision makers at that level. Other than that, if you look at the history, post 1973, there was a lot of support to the Israelis from the Americans until date. It's believed that over 120 billion US dollars have been given to them in the form of aid. That is around $3 billion a year. So you can well imagine the kind of support they're getting in the form of cash, kind, equipment, technical support, transfer of technology, and a lot of mutual issues in which they are working together. But when you look at the previous government of Mr. Barack Obama, you'll remember that in 2015, Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, went to the United States of America and he spoke against the then President, Mr. Barack Obama. And since he was not a Republican, he was a Democrat, so he spoke with the Republicans and there was a lot of hue and cry. But that actually showed us one thing, that even the American president do not have that kind of power, which the Israeli lobby enjoys in the United States of America. And now once Donald Trump was picked up as the next president, things in the Palestinian region actually changed. A lot of support, unnecessary support, illegal support was given to the Israelis, but nobody talks about the Palestinian issue as such. Nobody talks about the killings which are taking place there. Nobody talks about the bombing which is taking place on almost daily basis. We end up hearing that so many children got killed, so many women got killed. I mean, bombing on the civilian sites. That is something which we'll be talking about in our today's program. And one important issue, this particular move by the United States of America, is it going to create any sort of a hurdle between the peace process when we talk about the Palestinians and the Israelis? But before I introduce you to our guests, we have prepared a report. Let's watch that.
Is reversing the Obama administration's approach towards Israeli settlements. U.S. public statements on settlement activities in the West Bank have been inconsistent over decades. The establishment of Israeli civilian settlements in the West Bank is not, per se, inconsistent with international law. In the history of the world.
That was Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State of the United States of America. It is also believed that around 600,000 Jews live in about 140 settlements, and they are still moving on. It's just like a lava coming out of the crater and it's just spreading. That's exactly the way Israel is expanding at the moment. To talk about this issue, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us Air Vice Marshal retired Faisal Saab, who's a senior analyst and also the Vice Chancellor of Air University, Islamabad. So thank you very much. And we have with us Ambassador Shahid M.G. Kyani Saab, senior diplomat, sir. Thank you very much. And we have with us Abdul Rehman Saab, who's a known Arab journalist. Thank you very much, sir. AVM Saab, first of all, we all heard what Mr. Pompeo just said. And looking at the last couple of days, sir, stories coming on BBC, on a couple of other television channels and news also, that now there is a very clear-cut support for the Israelis, legitimate or illegitimate. That's a different chapter. But for the settlements also, it started from Jerusalem being declared as the capital, despite that there was hue and cry all over the world, but they did it. Talking about the West Bank, talking about the Golan Heights, they are slowly but surely moving, sir, in left, right, and everywhere, sir. Expansion is taking place. Your take, sir.
Well, the Israeli expansionist designs and its colonial ambitions have never been hidden from the sight of the international community. and these have all along been condemned by all and sundry, starting from, if you look at the states, all states without exception, except probably America, have been condemning the Israeli occupation of West Bank and Golan Heights and other areas since 1967,
Yep.
when they were usurped. Since then, there has hardly been acceptance of Israeli occupation of these lands. You talk of the ICJ, you talk of the United Nations Security Council, you talk of Red Cross, you talk of European Union, you talk of any organization worth its salt, they all have condemned. And even the United States in 1978 declared the settlements in the West Bank as in contravention of international law. And today, after 41 years, Mr. Pompeo, citing the ground realities and unique facts on ground, he declares that these are not found inconsistent with the international law. Now, who gives that authority to US or US State Department to declare the UN Security Council resolutions that has very categorically all along condemned the Israeli occupation of the area? And in 2016, resolution 2334, it clearly states that the Israeli settlements are in clear violation of not only international law but also the 4th Geneva Convention. And the Geneva Convention, the 4th one, which was adopted in 1949, it clearly states that the occupying forces has the responsibility of protecting the civilian personnel and their properties and their lives living there. So Israel has not only been killing people that live under its occupation, it has also been usurping their land and their properties. So Israel today, I mean, the American stance today is not so much a surprise, but it definitely is in contravention with the international laws. Why it is not a surprise? Because just you mentioned that the American acceptance of East Jerusalem and the combined Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, then the acceptance of Israeli sovereignty over Golan Heights,
yes,
and then moving its embassy to Jerusalem. Now, what intrigues me is the timing of this announcement. Now, although the Israeli media and the State Departments, they claim that this has been a result, this decision or this announcement has been a result of a year-long study that they found that these settlements are not in conflict with international law. But the timing is, look at first and foremost the Trump's position in his own elections and his impeachment that is taking place
currently. Oh yes,
the Trump eventually may not be impeached, but it definitely is going to sway the public opinion, because as it proceeds and as more and more people get involved, the Trump's position is going to get affected. So this is actually winning over once again the Zionist lobby towards the Trumpian,
in order to gain some sort of support
to undermine whatever the Democrats are doing. One second party to the conflict is Benjamin Netanyahu. He has a severe political crisis in Israel.
Yes, can't form the government.
And the other party has been offered to make a government. Now look at the timing of this particular announcement that just says that as long as Benjamin Netanyahu is there, the US will stay behind him. And this is what the support he requires. And Benjamin Netanyahu can very surely claim that he is indispensable to Israel. But third and foremost stakeholder is Pompeo himself. Actually, Pompeo is contemplating an election, a Senate seat election from Kansas, city of Kansas.
Okay. And what that has got to do with it, sir?
His announcement actually wins over the much needed funding required for his election campaign and the Jewish lobby in his city. Okay. So there are all the three stakeholders, major stakeholders, the political ones, not the states. Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Mr. Pompeo himself, they stand to gain from these announcements.
Can sir, if you remember in 2015, Netanyahu was the Prime Minister of Israel, sir.
Yeah.
He went to United States of America when Barack Obama was the president. And the kind of language he used, I still remember I did a show on that, and the kind of aggression he's shown towards Barack Obama, and then the kind of decisions which we all witnessed after that. Sir, if you remember, Barack Obama, when he took charge, he did speak about the Palestinian issue. He did talk about the Guantanamo Bay shutting down. He did talk about even Kashmir. Nothing has been sorted out. Rather, the situation has gotten worse in those areas. Sir. Then Donald Trump comes back, takes charge as the current president. P5+1 was even not accepted by the Americans. That was, I think, one of the best deals ever done in this century, sir.
Absolutely.
So this kind of an attitude, sir, is it because of the Democratic and the Republican point of view, sir? Or primarily you think, sir, this is one line which the Americans are towing. It really doesn't matter who is the president. At the end of the day, there are certain strong lobbies which are actually the puppeteers, sir. That's what I would say. Your take.
Let me first say to you, President Trump has been, an ultra-conservative, but he's not the only ultra-conservative. You look at President Reagan and then the younger Bush. But all these leaders, while they continue to give support to the Israeli government and the state, nobody could dare say publicly the way Pompeo said today. The only person who, naturally speaking, was not boxed in by the Israeli lobby or the Jewish lobby was President Obama. You remember he came once, and he only addressed the joint session of the US Congress, but didn't meet President Obama. Now what is prompting them, forget President Trump for a minute, what is prompting and encouraging them? Yes, I agree with the Vice Chancellor, the elections, the 2020 elections, but it's the muted response to this illegality of the Arab states. The total silence. For a very long time, I would just say, for a very long time, the Arab states have become totally silent. And the OIC itself and the Muslim world in general. Look at what is happening to the Kashmiris in IHK and then the Rohingyas and the Palestinians who have suffered for the last 7 decades. What was the watershed? And let me tell you, the recognition of Israel by both Egypt and Jordan. I'm not saying that nobody should recognize this, it's a different issue. These two major countries who border Israel, once they recognized them, the whole other Arab world fell silent. Now, most of the Arab countries either have official contact with the Israeli government or
behind the curtains.
Behind the curtains.
Yes.
Now, once they have it, the Israeli government and the American, I would say, White House and the lobbyists, they exactly know what to do about the Palestinians or anything concerned, like the Golan Heights you told me, and what will be the response. If the response is silent, total muted, which are the countries who somehow or the other make noise or voice their concern in the Muslim world are Turkey, Pakistan and Malaysia. The others are total silent. So if this suffering can continue, and then other things are very important.
Maybe Iran.
My colleague, yes, Arab, is a Palestinian, the Palestinians themselves are divided. They have to blame themselves. The Gaza Strip and the Palestinian other authority. They don't see eye to eye on this issue. If they would have been united, standing together, it would have been very difficult for the Israelis.
So do you believe the proxy wars being played in the Palestinian regions? Sir? They're also a big hindrance towards the achievement of a proper objective.
Very right.
So that a
look
peaceful
at,
deal
Abdul,
could be
look at what's happening in Libya, country totally destroyed, Syria, and to some extent Iraq. These are countries which have oil, countries which are relatively economically sovereign, but they have been destroyed. So these countries, now the attention of the most of the Arab countries are towards them. And look at what's happening in Yemen, another Arab country. The
5 years of war, sir.
Saudi Arabia, what's happening is that this is a transition from the older generation to the new generation. When all these countries, especially Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries and Arab countries like Egypt, Jordan, if they are muted, if they are quiet, sir, what do you think should be
Then
the
you should
response?
not expect anything from
Forget
USA,
about,
sir, or any other country for
forget
that
about
matter.
President Trump being there or not. Any president who would have been there would cash on this disunity and this muted response.
Badr sir, your take, sir.
No doubt, the Middle East is passing through the weakest ever maybe situation since the last maybe 100 years or maybe more. But again, the blame should not be only on the Palestinians and the Arabs. The blame should be on the whole Muslim Ummah.
Absolutely.
The Palestinian land, the Jerusalem, it is the holy land for the whole Muslims. Each and every individual Muslim has his own share in that piece of land. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran, in the holy book, He is telling us that this is a holy place in which each and every Muslim has his own share over there. So each and every Muslim to be blamed, each and every government of the Muslim Ummah to be blamed. It's not only the Palestinians. Palestinians are maybe the weakest ever people among all the nations because they are under occupation since the last 70 plus years. Arabs, the Arab countries are facing a lot of problems since the last maybe 11 or 12 years under the so-called Arab Spring. So all of us knows the story. But again, hope is always there. Today there was a very important announcement made by the Malaysian leader Mahathir Mohamad, in which he says that a new Islamic bloc was created in which Malaysia, Indonesia, Pakistan, Qatar and Turkey is the members. They will be holding their first meeting in next month. And one of the main issues they are discussing, in addition to Islamophobia, blah, blah, and others, is the Palestinian issue. So hope is there in the Muslim Ummah and these five countries. OIC is still, yes, inactive, but maybe they can, those five countries that can encourage the other OIC members to work more and be active more. We should never ever lose the hope. This is the main point.
But sir, we should not lose the hope. I totally agree with you. But sir, how long can the Palestinian people suffer? That's the point, sir. Ever since Israel came into being, sir, we have been witnessing, forget about the first maybe 15, 20 years of the Israeli existence, but late 60s and early 70s was the time when the Americans were totally supporting them, giving them all sorts of aid. And they were, in fact, in one way, a lot of people believe that because of the Russian influence, they really wanted a very strong ally in the region. And they claim that Israel is the strongest and the most powerful and the best democracy in the region. So they supported it, and eventually do not look at the size of the country, sir. Look at the strength of the country. And eventually it has taken over. You talk about the war, France and Britain, along with Israelis, went after the Egyptians. After that, we all know the way the Americans supported in 1973. It went after almost all the Muslim countries. So that was a time when they established their illegitimate threat also. That, see, we are the decision makers in the region. And you're absolutely right, when it comes to the Muslim countries, even prior to 2011, prior to the Arab Spring, what was happening, we all know, sir.
This is what I'm trying to say. First of all, we have to understand the reality. We have to understand in depth the importance of this piece of land. And we have to tell ourselves and our colleagues and our new generation that this is a holy secret land in which each and everyone has his own share and each and everyone has his own responsibility to defend. And I think the second step should be, after understanding, we should try to unite ourselves. All this happening, all the atrocities happening inside Palestine, and by the way, even the similar atrocities taking place in Kashmir, it is because of the disunity among the Muslims. If the Muslims in the whole Muslim Ummah are united, I don't think Indians will be able to and dare to do this much of atrocities which they are doing in occupied Kashmir. And even the Jewish, they won't be able, the Israelis, to do all this much of atrocities. The point is that we are, we are fighting each other. What's happening in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya, is that we are the people, we are fighting ourselves. We are fighting against each other. And this is the main problem we are facing since the last so many years. Hope is there. Again, I'm saying that we should never ever lose the hope.
Now, coming back to you, Middle Eastern crisis, a young man practically who's the decision maker in Saudi Arabia, looking at the current situation in Iran, sir. Then you have Turkey on one side and chaos all over, sir. And you know, when you talk about the history, sir, for some reason, a lot of people believe that the way they are destroying the holy sites, the way they are occupying the space of the Muslims, sir, whether in the tangible form or otherwise, primarily, sir, there's an agenda to actually distort history. And in the future, maybe after 40, 50 years, sir, when the children would open up their laptops, or I don't know what sort of a gadget they'll have, so when they'll click, so it is going to be something through Wikipedia or Google or something of that sort, sir. Because history, it seems that history is changing, sir. There is a big feeling everywhere that there is this philosophy, even in India, sir. They're even trying to challenge the Taj Mahal, that it wasn't built by Shah Jahan, maybe it was some other, or maybe there is some other holy Hindu place. Look what they have done with Babri Mosque, demolished. Look at the verdict of the court. Do you think something of at a larger scale is happening, sir?
I agree with you, Faisal. Perceptions and narratives matter.
Sure.
What is happening in Palestine today and for the last over 70, 80 years, or maybe 100 years, is the narratives are being changed. From a totally Palestinian territory, the next narrative was the holy Jewish land. What you have been saying today, and what you see today is that when the Americans recognize the settlements, and which are huge, occupying huge, and which have actually, if you look at the Israel-Palestinian map, they've actually shred to pieces
Absolutely.
the
Over a period of time.
over a period of time. Now, whenever you Google or you look for the Palestinian map, you will see a new map which is all shredded and occupied by the Israeli settlements. What is happening is that Israelis are now calling their government to declare, because the Americans have, or the U.S. State Department has supported their occupation of those settlements, they should declare sovereignty over those areas that they've occupied.
Okay.
Because since till now those areas are disputed territory. But when Israel declares sovereignty, just like the Indians declared sovereignty over Kashmir, the narrative changes. Then they become part of the Israeli basic law, a basic constitution. So those territories now become the do not anymore remain the disputed territories, but they are Israeli territories. And as you said, the history will change. The maps will change.
Maps
The
have
new
changed.
maps. The new maps will declare those areas as Israeli areas. What it does is, it actually goes far beyond this.
Sure.
This actually destroys the two-state theory or two-state agreement that has been talked about and agreed upon by both parties since 1974. After the 1973 war, in 1974, the UN resolutions, they talked of two-state solution to Israeli and Palestinian conflict, where the two states of Palestinian and Israelis will exist west of River Jordan. Now, this was accepted by the Palestinians and Israelis. Palestinians accepted it in 1980s, and in 1993 in Oslo Accord, the Israelis also accepted the two-state theory. But that two-state theory was based on the territories that were held at 1967, which the Israelis did not recognize. But now, when you start to usurp that, when you start to cut those lands and make them be part of your own territory, you're actually destroying the only solution probably
Everybody agreed upon,
is the two-state theory, and this particular action, supported by the United States State Department, actually destroys that hope that there ever will be a peaceful settlement through negotiations. It just means recognition of ground realities, recognition of occupation of forces by the powerful, by the mighty, and through the blackmail and manipulation of the US election process, which takes place every 4 years. So it means that the Israel would have its own goals and objectives every 4 years. So they
And right before the elections, we see something happening.
So they either it happens right before the elections or it happens right after the elections, because a new candidate promises them to give something to them if he is supported. So as the elections are over and the new party comes in, within 6 months to 1 year, you have certain new moves coming in, as certain new initiatives coming in, which always favor the Israeli side.
Even,
and have
even
never
in the case of the
So-
current government, I remember Donald Trump went to Saudi Arabia. That was his first official visit. And right after that, he was in Israel.
So the reality in the world is not the occupied territories anywhere or the human right violations anywhere. The only reality today in the world is a 4-year American election cycle. And the entire
everything revolves around
everything
that.
revolves around that. A year before that, before the election year, the entire dynamics of all the disputed areas and all the human right disputes and human right violation, it just takes a change. It takes a change because of the dictates, of the required needs, the funding needs and the supporting needs by the of the new contestants in the election. So it is the only reality today. What you see is the American elections, and that's the only reality.
And that's what matters in that
That's what matters
region.
everywhere.
Now, sir, there was a very interesting statement that said Trump's gifts to Israel, Jerusalem, Golden Heights, and the settlements. Now, the way AVM Sahib has just described the way the maps are changing, so honestly, I mean, if you look at the history starting from 1947, 48, all the way now, that green area, it's just like, you know, when you show somebody the climate change factor, the way the glaciers are melting and it's been taken over, exactly the same way, sir.
So, okay.
Where is it going to stop? Because according to certain philosophers, it's not only this part, sir. They're also eyeing at certain areas of Syria, Saudi Arabia, maybe Jordan.
Let me first say to you, you're talking about rewriting of history. We also had our share of rewriting history. If you read Professor K.K. Aziz's book, Murder of History, you will understand rewriting history has taken place in our country also. So we are quite used to it. Now, let me just say to you, sir, we need to, my narrative, we need to look inside. Prime Minister Modi, who has his hands full of killing of Muslims, now he strikes a balance. He goes to Israel, makes a strategic alliance, and also tries to appease the Palestinians. Not a whimper of protest from any Arab country. I'm sorry to say, sir, that what is this happening? Meaning he has the best of relationship with a country which is by all means a fascism. Look what they are doing with the Muslims. The Palestinian majority of the Palestinians are Muslims. What's happened to them? So why not? Why blame the Muslims? Why not look at this dichotomy of one of the largest
Not
democracies in the world?
bystanders, sir. The approaches are different.
So if he can get away, why blame President Trump? President Trump has a huge number of Israelis and the Israeli lobby inside. So we have to, sir, strike a balance between the two. We have to look into how this policy is acceptable to the Arab countries. And that's why there's a muted response to the suffering of the Kashmiris and IHK, the Rohingyas, and now the Palestinians. I have full sympathy with the Palestinians. They have suffered immensely. Many of them are living in refugee camps. How can somebody live?
Rebels, I mean, do you...
And one of the most intelligent people, one of the highly educated people, refugees anywhere in the world are the Palestinians. This is one. The other thing is, sir, if you look at the statement of Secretary of State Pompeo, it looks like if you look at the State Department itself, it has never been in sync with the White House. State Department always goes with the legal. It still considers the West Bank, the occupation, as illegal. If you look at the statement, if you read the statement, he said that without prejudice to the West Bank. You see. So there's an ambiguity. It has left this thing, for anybody to interpret in any way. And again, the State Department, which he represents, will remain ambiguous, while the White House is absolutely clear that President Trump says that he couldn't care less. this.
Is there a disconnect between the two,
Absolutely.
or maybe they have two different narratives?
It has always been a disconnect. State departments always followed the law. I'm being honest with you, and whereas the White House has its own, you see, political, ambitions, and as you said, the 2020 elections, it's much more deeper. I say to you, sir, forget the elections. If President Trump or the U.S. administration and the U.S., the institutions which are the Meta, the Pentagon and the CIA and others, if they find that there will be a serious uproar, amongst the Muslim world or the Arab world, they wouldn't take this step. But they have taken it because they know what the ramifications are. My colleague from the Palestinian colleague, he was talking about these 5 countries getting together. But it's a good idea.
Do you think that is going to make any difference?
I have all my doubts, and I tell you, sir, why. Sir, at this time in a unipolar world, where the American, you see, brute, military strength and political strength is so strong that other countries cannot match. Because we would require, these countries would require like big economic partners like Saudi Arabia.
So, sir,
and
if I say that
Iran,
it's no more a multipolar or a bipolar world, it is actually still a unipolar. And the Americans are the
Absolutely.
supreme leaders,
Sir,
and they call the shots,
they-
and that is it.
They are calling the shots for the last now, sir, many decades. Since the end of the Cold War, many people I hear on the
No,
television.
everybody, in fact, went against them. All the United Nations Security Council members, and the Americans. I mean, they always veto. I mean, look at the number of. You talk about the resolutions. More than 50% of them regarding the Israelis, they've been vetoed by the Americans.
Sir, the only strong Arab leader ever was King Faisal, if you recall. The
See
one
what
who-
happened to him.
Oil man. Look what fate he met. If today the whole Arab world and the Muslim world stands today and said we'll boycott, politically, diplomatically, Israel and its policies, you would see a major change. But that is not going to happen, sir, because we believe in real politics, and real politics means, you see, saying something
They're doing something
and
else.
doing something different. When this continues, it gives a lot of way to the Americans and the Israelis to go scot-free. So we, sir, we are looking at countries which are economic. And then last thing, you're looking at the unity. What about the big divide between the Iranians and the whole Arab world? How can such, you see, unity be looking for such unity when there is such a divide? And this is how, within this divide that the Israelis, this schism that they move in.
Martin, now they say that the elections are very important in Israel. Now, sir, whoever forms the government, let's suppose Netanyahu forms the government. What do you see happening after that, sir? And what if he doesn't? Do you think there's going to be any change in the Israeli stance in the region, sir?
I don't think the Israelis' policies is always the same almost regarding the Middle East, regarding the Palestinian issue, regarding the Arab countries. The only difference will be only internally. It will be just, a very few minor things which is related to the Israelis within themselves. There will be no this much difference or impact on the Palestinian issue or in the Arabian countries. And I just wanted to have a quick comment about regarding the American rule. I think all the American might and all the American power was failed. So far it's failing in Afghanistan since the last 18 years. And I think the main reason is that they found some kind of a serious people to stop them, to fight them, to say no to them. Unfortunately, there is no seriousness in the Middle East, in the Arab countries, especially among the leaders. And that's why we are suffering. The Arab countries, the Arab nation, the population, the Palestinians are suffering because there is no serious leadership. And we should always remember a fact that none of the Arab leaders, current Arab leaders, are elected Arab leaders. Most of them are maybe a monarch, or maybe they are an authoritarian leaders. Maybe the Tunisian president was recently elected, or otherwise. And this is the situation since the last maybe 70, 80 years. So we should not, definitely we should understand the situation, but also we should not hope that those leaders will be able to do anything in favor of their own people or in favor of the Palestinians. It is up to the people themselves to understand and to rise and to start, working practically regarding Palestine. The bloc I was mentioning, which was announced today about those 5 Muslim countries, this is a start. This is a good hope. It gives us a hope as the Palestinians that maybe, hopefully, those 5 countries will be able to stop the American aggression, the Israeli atrocities in the Holy Land. Regarding the support, the power support or the financial support, I don't think these 5 countries need any support from Saudi Arabia or any other country. They need also to be serious. Turkey should immediately cut its relations with Israel. Malaysia should immediately cut its relation with Israel. They should be serious themselves initially, and then they should ask the others to be serious.
You think they'll do that?
Hopefully.
I mean,
I'm telling
currently,
there will be
Mr. Najib has been sent to the jail in Malaysia. Mahathir Mohamad is 93, 94 years old. And on top of that, when you look at Imran Khan, look at the current government, look at the stance. You look at Turkey, a lot of people are after Erdogan also. The Americans saw the cases from within. And even if you look at Qatar for that matter, I mean, the relationship with either Saudi Arabia or other Gulf countries, that's not that great. So these are the odd ones out. Don't you think so?
They are no doubt. It's very clear. But at least what I'm trying to say that this is a hope. We should never lose the hope, even if it is so weak or so far or as you are describing it. But again, each and everyone who speak in favor of Palestine, he should be saluted and he should be encouraged, even if he is just talking. Because this gives an impression that the Palestinian issue is still alive among, in some minds and some hearts.
Now, even the last 2-3 minutes, which I was just told, which we have at the moment, sir. I mean, what should be the way forward? So what sort of an option do you think Mahmoud Abbas Saab has? I recently saw him in Oslo about 2 months ago. And he was there, and obviously a lot of people were there to support him and everything. But say, when you read the headlines and everything, I mean, the support seems to be there from some sane nations, but eventually, when you go back to the basics, sir, it doesn't exist, sir. I mean, unfortunately, it's back to square one.
In freedom movements, the only hope is the people that are fighting, that you need to continue to support them. From outside, you cannot win a war for them. They have to fight their wars, and the people of the world with conscience, people of the world who care for human rights violations. Let's not forget last 2 weeks what happened in Gaza. The
How many
relentless,
innocent people
merciless, ruthless, brutal, catastrophic bombing by the Israelis.
Oh, yes.
For last 2 weeks, killed scores of people, including
Destroy
children,
schools, hospitals,
children,
libraries. That's
women,
what they attack.
Children, women, schools, houses, scores of them
Entire
injured,
residential areas were wiped out, sir.
hundreds injured, scores are killed. Let's not forget that. And this is just before this announcement, just to placate the area, to suppress the voice of dissent.
Then the local population move in.
So before the announcement is made, it means America holds responsibility for those killings that have happened in the last 2 weeks.
But they are Muslims.
Because
who would bother?
Yes, they don't bother.
That's
what
the
I'm
point.
saying is that is the international conscience that needs to get up. But the way forward only is for these people to continue to resist. We and our whosoever it is, whether it is Arabs or the Muslim Ummah, or even the people in Europe who are supporting the Palestinian cause against the Israeli atrocities. I think we all need to even gather that support from the non-Muslims as well. Particularly Europe is a very strong voice against the Israelis. It is only APAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee in the United States, that supports the American cause the Israeli cause in America. But we need to create lobbies in states as well that support or that speak for the Palestinians. I think there is a lack of concerted support, financially and otherwise, to create that kind of a lobby that speaks for the Palestinians in the United States.
Sir.
I would just say to you, you look at European Union has distanced itself from the Pompeo statement. And look at President Macron few days back said
French,
that that we need Europe has to look for its security itself. I just want to say, sir, you do whatever you like. And I want to say, sir, to you again, my narrative a little different. As long as the Arab world remains silent to the suffering of the Palestinians and other Muslims, look what happened to the people in IHK, Kashmiris, the whole Arab world and Muslim world is silent. Once this happens, let's not blame the Israeli lobby or they blame others.
Blame yourself.
Blame ourselves. Once this happens, the Israelis will bulldoze everything.
They have already done it,
Yes.
they are still doing and they will do it in the future. Sir.
It's not only the responsibility of the Arabs, mainly it is, but again, it is the responsibility of the whole Muslim Ummah,
Absolutely.
whether it is Palestine or Kashmir.
Anyway, sir, let's hope and pray that
It's a global responsibility.
it is indeed, but as long as they realize, that's the point, sir. But anyway, Mahathir sir, thank you very much. Ambassador, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Faisal. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz. आज मुझे सारा डेटा